Imagine watching your son's bride walk down the aisle to music she stole from your late husband, whom she killed for it. That's Nino Surguladze's reality. If this betrayal hits home, hit like and share your story. You won't believe how justice unfolded.
Thanks, Eliza, for letting me share this. It's been a fight to protect David's memory, but I'm here to tell how truth triumphed over her lies, raw and real. I rise from the front pew as the first notes of David's composition fill the church, my silver hair woven in the traditional Georgian braided crown my grandmother taught me when I was 7. The same style I wore on my own wedding day 27 years ago. The same style I wore to his funeral 18 months ago. My hands are steady, my breathing is controlled. Inside, I am volcanic. "Excuse me," I say, my voice carrying across the hushed sanctuary filled with 200 guests. "Before we proceed, I'd like to share something beautiful about true love and artistic legacy." The pianist's fingers freeze above the keys. Marcus turns from the altar, his face already flushing with embarrassment. Isabelle, resplendent in her $8,000 Vera Wang gown, goes rigid beneath her cathedral-length veil. I adjust my braided crown and smile serenely. After all, I have a story to tell. 2 years ago, David's fingers moved across the piano keys with the same reverence other men reserved for prayer. The music room in our Brookhaven home had become his sanctuary. Sheet music scattered across the baby grand, pencil shavings dusting the mahogany surface, and always, the sound of him humming under his breath as he worked. "Listen to this, Nino," he called that evening, his voice hoarser than usual. The cough had been getting worse, but David refused to slow down. I think I finally got the bridge right. I set down my calligraphy pen. I'd been working on a commission for the mayor's daughter's wedding invitation, and moved to stand behind his bench. His salt and pepper hair was mussed from running his hands through it, a habit he'd never broken in 25 years of marriage. The melody began softly, tentatively, like morning light creeping across our bedroom floor. Then it bloomed into something achingly beautiful, hope and joy, and the kind of love that survives decades of ordinary Tuesdays. "This one's for you, my muse," he said, glancing up at me with those warm brown eyes that had first captured my heart at a poetry reading in Little 5 Points. "Every note carries a piece of our story." I leaned down and kissed the top of his head, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with sheet music and dreams. "It's perfect, my love, absolutely perfect." He played it 3 more times that night, adjusting a phrase here, softening a transition there. Each change was deliberate, purposeful. This wasn't just music, it was our marriage transformed into melody, our love story written in notes and measures. I had no idea I was listening to his farewell gift. This morning, I arrived at the bridal suite at the Chateau Elan with a handwritten poem tucked into my beaded clutch. 3 hours until the ceremony, and I was determined to make this work. For Marcus, for the family David had dreamed we'd become. The poem had taken me weeks to write, each word carefully chosen, each line flowing into the next like the calligraphy I'd practiced since childhood in Tbilisi. It was about new beginnings, about love that grows stronger with time, about the joy of watching your child find their person. I'd even included a line about Isabelle's laugh, how it reminded me of wind chimes on a summer evening. It wasn't entirely true, but I was trying. God knows I was trying. David would have loved seeing Marcus this happy, I whispered to my reflection in the hotel bathroom mirror, adjusting the silver braided crown one more time. My grandmother always said this hairstyle brought strength to Georgian women. Maybe it's time I learned to love Isabelle too. The suite was chaos when I arrived, bridesmaids in various stages of dress, makeup artists wielding brushes like weapons, and the overwhelming scent of gardenias and hairspray. I'd reserved judgment about the gardenias. David had always preferred roses. Mrs. Surguladze, Isabelle's maid of honor, a sharp-featured woman named Claire, rushed toward me. "Isabelle is in the back room doing final preparations. She's so excited about your gift." My heart lifted slightly. Maybe this would be the moment we finally connected. Maybe today would be the beginning of something beautiful. I should have known better. The back room of the church was supposed to be empty. I'd come to leave my poem on the small table where Isabelle would see it before walking down the aisle, a private moment between mother-in-law and bride, a peace offering wrapped in carefully chosen words. Instead, I found Isabelle crouched beside a metal wastebasket, feeding papers to a small flame. Sheet music, David's handwriting, the distinctive way he drew his treble clefs like tiny birds taking flight. "What are you doing?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Isabelle looked up, her perfectly applied makeup unmarred by guilt or shame. "Oh, you're early." I moved closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Pages and pages of David's compositions were turning to ash. Melodies I'd watched him birth, harmonies he'd hummed while making coffee, the musical diary of our marriage, all of it burning. "Those are David's." "We're David's," Isabelle corrected, standing and smoothing her dress. "Now they're mine. Marcus signed over his father's estate to me last month. Wedding gift." The room tilted. Marcus wouldn't. Marcus would do anything for me. Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. "And once these are destroyed, there's no proof the music was ever his. The compositions will be mine forever." I stared at her, this woman I'd been trying so hard to love, and saw a stranger. Worse than a stranger. A thief. "The wedding march," I whispered, "the processional music, is my original composition, yes. I'll be performing it as part of my portfolio for several music industry contacts who will be attending today." She smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible. "Isn't it wonderful how love inspires art?" "You can't do this." My voice was steadier than I felt. "That music is David's legacy. It's all Marcus has left of his father." Isabelle laughed, not wind chimes, I realized now, but breaking glass. "Your husband was a nobody who died forgotten. I'm giving his little songs the fame they never deserved." "Those songs were written for me, for our family. You have no right." "I have every right." She moved to the small vanity and began touching up her lipstick with practiced ease. "Do you know what your precious David needed help with toward the end? His medications. So many pills for that weak heart of his. It was confusing for him, poor thing." Something cold crawled up my spine. "What are you talking about?" "I helped him organize them, made sure he took everything he needed." She met my eyes in the mirror. I was very thorough, very helpful. The words hung in the air like smoke. David had mentioned Isabelle stopping by during those final weeks, bringing groceries, offering to help with errands. I'd been grateful. I'd thought she was being kind. "You didn't." "Your husband was so trusting. He actually thanked me for bringing his heart medication. Can you imagine?" She turned from the mirror, her expression serene. "Now, I suggest you return to your seat. The ceremony begins in an hour, and I have a career to launch." I stumbled from the back room in a daze, Isabelle's words echoing in my mind. The wedding program lay on a nearby table, elegant script announcing the order of service. I picked it up with trembling hands. "Processional, Love's Promise, original composition by Isabelle Dubois." "Mother of the Groom reading, New Beginnings, original poem by Isabelle Dubois." My poem, the one tucked in my clutch, the one I'd spent weeks crafting. She'd somehow gotten hold of it and claimed it as her own. I looked around the church with new eyes. Half the guests were strangers, men in expensive suits checking their phones, women with press badges tucked discreetly into their purses. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a showcase. A debut performance where Isabelle would claim ownership of David's life's work in front of industry buyers. She hadn't just stolen from David. She'd stolen from me too. And she was about to perform our love story for an audience of strangers who would pay her for the privilege of using our most intimate moments. The church bells chimed, 30 minutes until the ceremony. I had 30 minutes to decide whether to let my husband's killer walk down the aisle to his music or destroy my relationship with my son forever. "Mom," Marcus appeared at my elbow, resplendent in his black tuxedo. David's cufflinks gleamed at his wrists, the only piece of his father he'd been allowed to keep, apparently. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" I stared at my son, this beautiful man who had David's eyes and my stubborn chin. How could I tell him that the woman he loved had murdered his father? How could I explain that his wedding was built on theft and lies? "Marcus, I need to tell you something about Isabelle." "Mom," His voice carried a warning I'd never heard before. Isabelle told me you might have an episode today. She said grief can make people confused. An episode, the words hit like a slap. She's worried about you. We both are. He took my hands, and I felt the calluses from his guitar playing, another gift from David. She said you might try to disrupt things because you're having trouble letting go of Dad. Marcus, that's not. I need you to promise me something. His grip tightened. Whatever's going on in your head, whatever you think you know, don't ruin the most important day of my life, please. I looked into his face and saw a stranger. When had my son learned to choose someone else over me? When had I become the problem to be managed rather than the mother to be trusted? Promise me, Mom. The church bells chimed again, 15 minutes. I promise, I whispered, and watched relief flood his features. But I didn't promise what he thought I did. I promised to make sure the most important day of his life revealed the truth. 25 minutes before the ceremony, I found Marcus adjusting his boutonniere in the groom's preparation room. The white rose, David's favorite, looked perfect against his black lapel. If only he knew his bride had chosen it deliberately, another stolen piece of our family's story. Marcus, I need to speak with you privately. I closed the door behind me, my hands still trembling from what I'd witnessed, about what I saw Isabelle doing. He turned, and I saw David's patient expression on our son's face. Mom, we talked about this. She was burning your father's sheet music, original compositions. She's planning to claim them as her own work. The words tumbled out in a rush. The processional music, that's Dad's piece, the one he wrote for me. Marcus's expression shifted from patience to concern, but not the kind I'd hoped for. Mom, Isabelle warned me this might happen. Warned you? She told me you've been struggling since Dad died, that you might try to sabotage our happiness because you can't let go. His voice was gentle but firm. She said grief can make people see things that aren't there. I stared at my son, watching Isabelle's poison work its way through his thoughts. She'd prepared for this moment, planted seeds of doubt about my mental state weeks ago. Every conversation, every concerned look, every gentle suggestion that I might need help, it had all been building to this. Marcus, I'm not hallucinating. I saw her burn the manuscripts. She admitted she's going to perform Dad's music as her own composition for industry contacts. Isabelle helped care for Dad in those final weeks, Marcus said, his tone taking on the practiced quality of someone repeating a well-rehearsed explanation. She told me you might have trouble accepting how much she meant to him, how grateful he was for her help. The word help hit like a physical blow. Did Marcus know what kind of help Isabelle had provided, or was that just another layer of her manipulation? Your father wrote that music for our family, for our love story. And now it's part of Isabelle's love story too. Marcus straightened his tie, David's tie, I realized with a fresh stab of pain. Mom, I need you to let this go, please. 15 minutes later, I was cornered in the church vestibule by Isabelle herself. She'd changed from her wedding gown into a simple white dress for our confrontation, easier to move in, I supposed. I thought you might try something like this, she said, producing a manila folder from her bridal suite bag. So I came prepared. The folder contained a restraining order, already filled out, requiring only a signature. My name was typed in the defendant line. One word from me about feeling threatened, and you'll be removed from the premises by security. She smiled that perfect smile. You'll miss your own son's wedding. You can't. I can, but that's not all. She opened a second folder, this one thick with contracts and legal documents. I've already sold 3 of David's compositions to film studios. The contracts are being finalized during the reception tonight. By tomorrow morning, I'll own the rights to your husband's entire catalog. The papers showed David's signature, or what looked like his signature. But the dates were wrong. These contracts were supposedly signed weeks after his death. Forgery is a crime, Isabelle. Prove it. She tucked the papers away with practiced efficiency. I have lawyers, money, and your son's complete trust. You have the ravings of a grieving widow who can't accept that life moves on. I looked around the vestibule, noting the security guards positioned near the doors. 2 large men in black suits who'd appeared sometime in the last hour. Not wedding staff, private security. Why are you doing this? You could have anyone. Marcus deserves better than. Marcus deserves a wife who can give him the life he's always wanted. Success, recognition, financial security. Her voice took on an almost maternal tone. Your husband was talented but weak. He never had the vision to monetize his gift properly. I do. So you killed him for it. The words hung between us like a blade. For just a moment, Isabelle's mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. Careful, Nino. That sounds dangerously close to an accusation. The kind that might require medical intervention for the person making it. With 10 minutes until the ceremony, I moved through the church like a ghost, listening to conversations with new understanding. The strangers in expensive suits weren't just wedding guests, they were buyers. The bride's portfolio is quite impressive, a woman with a press badge was saying to her companion. 3 original compositions debuting today, with more promised for her upcoming album. Live debut performances always generate more buzz, the man replied. Smart marketing strategy, using the wedding as a launch event. Near the back of the church, I overheard 2 men discussing licensing deals. The processional piece alone could be worth 6 figures in the right film, one said. Romantic dramas eat this stuff up. And she's got the whole backstory worked out. Young widow channeling her grief into art. Very marketable. Young widow. Isabelle was already rewriting David's story, casting herself as the grieving artist instead of the woman who'd stolen everything he'd created. I realized with growing horror that this wedding wasn't just theft, it was opening night for her entire fraudulent career. Every note of David's music would be performed, recorded, and sold to the highest bidder, while 200 witnesses watched his killer claim credit for his life's work. The church bells chimed, 5 minutes. Marcus found me in the last pew, my hands folded in my lap like I was praying. Maybe I was. Mom, his voice carried a finality that made my blood run cold. Isabelle told me about your conversation, about the accusations you're making. Marcus. No. He sat beside me, but the distance between us felt like an ocean. I'm going to say this once, and I need you to really hear me. If you disrupt this ceremony in any way, if you make a scene, if you upset my wife, if you do anything to ruin this day, security will remove you, and you will never be welcome in my life again. The words hit like bullets. You don't mean that. I do. His voice was steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. Isabelle showed me the evidence of your declining mental health. The paranoid accusations, the inability to accept Dad's death, the way you've been fixating on her. What evidence? Photos of you following her, records of the strange phone calls you've been making to her friends, the rambling emails about Dad's music. He pulled out his phone, showing me screenshots I'd never seen before. She's been documenting everything, Mom. She's been trying to protect you from yourself. The screenshots showed messages I'd never sent, photos that had been taken without my knowledge. Isabelle had been building a case against my sanity for months, creating a paper trail that would discredit anything I might say. Choose, Mom. Marcus stood, straightening his jacket one final time. Accept that Isabelle is my wife and the mother of my future children, or lose me forever. He walked away without looking back, leaving me alone with the weight of an impossible decision. 2 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, Isabelle appeared beside my pew like a vision in white silk. Having second thoughts, she asked, settling beside me with the confidence of someone who'd already won. About what? About whether you're brave enough to destroy your relationship with Marcus over a few old songs. She adjusted her veil with practiced grace. I thought you might want to know the truth before you make your final decision. What truth? About how much your precious David suffered at the end. Her voice was conversational, almost friendly. The chest pains, the difficulty breathing, the way he'd clutch his heart and gasp for air, it was really quite pitiful. My hands clenched in my lap. Stop. But here's what you don't know, it didn't have to be that way. His medication was working beautifully until I started helping him organize his pills. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful, terrible thing I'd ever seen. Did you know that certain heart medications become lethal when combined with common blood thinners? I didn't, until I researched it. The church around us seemed to fade away. You researched it. Extensively, I needed to be sure it would look natural, and it did, didn't it? Poor David, dying peacefully in his sleep after months of declining health. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Your precious David was so trusting. He actually thanked me for bringing his heart medication. Can you imagine? He thanked me for the pills that killed him. You're a monster. I'm a businesswoman. Your husband had something I needed, and he was too weak to use it properly. I simply redistributed the assets. She stood as the opening notes of the processional began, David's music, played by strangers who would never know they were performing at his killer's celebration. Even if you tell Marcus, who would believe you? A grieving widow's wild accusations against a pregnant bride on her wedding day. Pregnant, the word hit me like a physical blow. That's right, Isabelle said, noting my expression. I'm carrying Marcus's child, your grandchild, so even if you destroy our marriage, I'll be part of your family forever. She glided toward the back of the church, leaving me alone with the devastating truth. David's killer was about to walk down the aisle to his music, carrying his grandchild, while his son waited at the altar with complete faith in her innocence. The organ swelled with the melody David had hummed while making coffee, the harmony he'd played while I worked on my calligraphy, the love song that had been our private language for 25 years. And I realized my phone had been recording the entire conversation. I sit frozen in the front pew as David's love song fills the church, watching his killer glide down the aisle in $8,000 of white silk. The melody that once meant everything, our first dance, our anniversary mornings, the soundtrack to 25 years of marriage, now accompanies a murderer's triumphant march. 200 guests rise to their feet. Cameras flash. Industry contacts lean forward with interest, already calculating profit margins on what they believe is Isabelle's original composition. She moves with practiced grace, her cathedral veil trailing behind her like a shroud. Each step is timed perfectly to David's crescendos, each pause choreographed to his most tender passages. She's not just stealing his music, she's dancing on his grave with our son as her partner. Marcus stands at the altar, tears of joy streaming down his face as he watches his bride approach. He has no idea he's listening to his father's final gift being desecrated. No idea the woman carrying his child is the same woman who researched the perfect combination of medications to stop David's heart. The phone in my clutch weighs nothing and everything. Isabelle's confession is recorded, her laughter about David thanking her for the pills that killed him preserved in digital clarity. But what good is evidence when your own son has been convinced you're mentally unstable? I close my eyes and see David's face the last time he played this piece, his fingers moving across the keys with the reverence of prayer. This one's for you, my muse, he'd said. Every note carries a piece of our story. Now it carries her story, her lies, her theft. The processional reaches its climax, and Isabelle arrives at the altar like a conquering queen claiming her prize. 11 p.m., the hotel room feels like a tomb. I sit on the edge of the bed with the few remaining pieces of David's life spread before me. 3 photographs that survived Isabelle's purge, his reading glasses with the scratched left lens, 1 sheet of music she missed, a fragment of a lullaby he'd been composing for future grandchildren. The irony cuts deep. She's pregnant with the grandchild this lullaby was meant for. Through the thin walls, I can hear wedding guests celebrating in adjoining rooms. Laughter. Champagne corks popping. The sound of people toasting a love story built on murder and theft. Tomorrow's reception will be the final act of Isabelle's performance. The contracts will be signed, the music rights transferred, her fraudulent career officially launched. By sunset, David's entire catalog will belong to his killer, and I'll be nothing more than a grieving widow who couldn't accept that life moves on. I pick up his glasses and trace the familiar scratches. He'd gotten them from reading sheet music in dim light, squinting at notes and measures late into the night. Such a small detail, but one that proves these compositions were his life's work, not hers. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus. Mom, I love you, but Isabelle is worried about your state of mind. Maybe it's time to consider getting some help. Even now, hours after the ceremony, she's still poisoning him against me, still building her case that I'm the problem, not her. I stare at my reflection in the dark window and see a stranger. Maybe Marcus is right. Maybe I am just a broken widow who can't accept that life moves on. But then I remember David's voice. Every note carries a piece of our story. Not her story, ours. Midnight, I dial the number I found online for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's Fraud Division, expecting voicemail and automated responses. Instead, a woman answers on the second ring, Detective Sarah Chen. I have information about a murder. The words feel strange in my mouth. And fraud, music theft, I'm not sure who to call. Ma'am, I need you to slow down. What's your name? Nino Surguladze. My daughter-in-law killed my husband and is stealing his compositions. I have a recording of her confessing. Silence, then. Mrs. Surguladze, where are you right now? The Chateau Elan. My son just married his father's killer. I need you to stay exactly where you are. I'm 20 minutes away. The line goes dead, leaving me staring at my phone in confusion. How did she know to come? Why wasn't she asking for more details? 23 minutes later, Detective Chen knocks on my door. She's younger than I expected, with sharp eyes and the kind of presence that suggests she's seen everything twice. Mrs. Surguladze, we've been building a case against Isabelle Dubois for months. The world tilts, you have. 3 suspicious deaths in the last 5 years, all involving older men with valuable assets, all involving mysterious medication mix-ups, all with Isabelle conveniently positioned to inherit or benefit. She sits across from me, pulling out a thick file. Your husband was victim number 4. I stare at the photographs spilling from the folder. 3 men I don't recognize, but all with the same story. Wealthy, talented, trusting, dead. We've been waiting for someone close enough to get proof, someone she might confess to. Detective Chen's voice is gentle but urgent. You might be our only chance to stop her before she kills again. But Marcus, your son is in danger too, Mrs. Surguladze. Isabelle's pregnant, which gives her legal claim to his assets. But historically, she doesn't keep husbands around long after the paperwork is settled. The room spins. What do you need me to do? Tomorrow's reception. We need her to claim ownership of the music publicly, in front of witnesses and cameras. We need her to incriminate herself while we're recording. I think of Marcus's ultimatum, his threat to cut me from his life forever. If I do this, I lose my son. If you don't, Detective Chen says quietly, you might lose him permanently. 6 a.m. The hotel conference room has been transformed into a war room. Detective Chen spreads blueprints of the reception venue across the table while 2 other investigators check equipment. The good news is that Isabelle's expecting a performance, Chen explains. She's invited industry contacts, potential buyers, even a few reporters. She wants an audience for her debut. And the bad news. She's also hired private security, 3 guards, all armed, all loyal to her money. Chen points to the venue layout, but we'll have 8 agents posing as guests, caterers, even a photographer. I study the faces of the undercover agents, memorizing each one. Strange to think that half the reception guests will be law enforcement, all waiting for the moment when Isabelle claims credit for David's life's work. What exactly do you need her to say? Ownership. We need her to explicitly claim she composed the music, preferably with specific details about the creative process. The more elaborate the lie, the stronger our case. Detective Chen hands me a small device, barely larger than a button. This goes on your dress, backup recording in case your phone fails. And if she realizes what's happening? She won't. Isabelle's weakness is her ego. She genuinely believes she's smarter than everyone else, that she's planned for every contingency. Chen's smile is sharp. She never planned for a mother's love being stronger than her manipulation. I think of Marcus, probably waking up beside his new wife right now, believing himself the luckiest man alive. In a few hours, I'll destroy that happiness forever. But I'll also save his life. We need her to claim ownership of the music in front of witnesses and cameras, Chen repeats. Can you make that happen? I adjust my silver braided crown, feeling my grandmother's strength flow through the ancient style. Detective, I'm a poet. Making people reveal their true selves with words is what I do. 10 a.m. Marcus arrives at my hotel room with hotel security flanking him like bodyguards. My son's face is stone, his jaw set in a way that reminds me painfully of David when he was angry. "Mom, we need to talk." The security guards position themselves in the hallway, close enough to intervene if needed. "Isabelle has thought of everything." "Isabelle told me about your phone calls last night," Marcus continues, closing the door behind him. "About the wild accusations you're making to law enforcement." My blood runs cold. How did she? "She has contacts everywhere. People who keep her informed about potential threats to our family's safety." He moves to the window, staring out at the reception venue being prepared below, including threats from unstable relatives. "Marcus, I'm not unstable. I'm trying to protect you." "From what? From the woman who's carrying my child." He turns, and I see a stranger wearing my son's face. "From the woman who loved Dad enough to care for him in his final weeks." "She didn't care for him, she killed him." The words hang between us like a blade. Marcus's expression shifts from anger to something approaching pity. "Mom, Isabelle is pregnant. We're having a baby." His voice is gentle, like he's explaining something to a confused child. "I'm choosing my wife and unborn child over whatever you've become." "Whatever I've become." A bitter woman who can't accept that life moves on, who would rather destroy her family than admit she's wrong. He pulls an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This is a cease and desist order. If you make any more accusations against my wife, we'll pursue legal action." I stare at the official documents, seeing David's name listed as deceased complainant's husband and my own name in the defendant section. "And if you disrupt the reception tonight or make any scene whatsoever, you'll be arrested for harassment and disturbing the peace." Marcus's voice breaks slightly. "I'm sorry it's come to this, Mom, but I'm choosing my family over your delusions." He heads for the door, then pauses. "For what it's worth, I do love you, but I love them more." The door closes with a finality that echoes through my chest. Outside in the hallway, I hear him speaking quietly to the security guards. She's not to be left alone with my wife under any circumstances. I sink onto the bed, holding the legal papers with trembling hands. Isabelle hasn't just stolen David's music and Marcus's trust. She's isolated me completely, turned my own son into her weapon against me. The recording device Detective Chen gave me sits on the nightstand like a tiny beacon of hope. But hope for what? Even if we prove Isabelle's guilt, Marcus will never forgive me for destroying his marriage and exposing his child's mother as a killer. 11 a.m., 1 hour until the reception begins. I sit before the hotel mirror, adjusting my silver braided crown one final time. In the reflection, I see 3 generations of Georgian women. My grandmother, who taught me that justice sometimes requires sacrifice. My mother, who showed me that love means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And myself, about to choose between my son's happiness and his life. The choice should be impossible, but Isabelle made it simple when she revealed her pregnancy. She's not just threatening Marcus now, she's threatening my grandchild. And if Detective Chen is right, if Isabelle's pattern holds true, Marcus has maybe 2 years before a convenient accident or medication error makes her a wealthy widow again. I touch the recording device hidden beneath my dress collar and think of David's hands moving across piano keys, creating beauty from nothing. Think of the lullaby fragment on my nightstand, written for a grandchild he'd never meet. Think of Isabelle's laughter as she described David thanking her for the pills that stopped his heart. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus. "I love you, Mom, but I can't have you in my life if you can't accept Isabelle. This is your last chance to choose." I type back slowly, each word a small death. "I love you too, my darling boy, more than you'll ever know." I don't tell him that love is exactly why I can't make the choice he wants. I don't tell him that sometimes protecting someone means letting them hate you forever. I don't tell him that his father would be proud of what I'm about to do, even if Marcus never will be. Instead, I stand and smooth my dress, checking that the recording device is secure. In my purse, I carry David's glasses, the fragment of his lullaby, and 3 photographs of our life together. Evidence, proof, truth. "I'm sorry, my darling boy, but I can't let your father's killer raise your child. Even if it means losing you forever, I won't let her win." The reception begins in 1 hour. Time to end this. The Chateau Elan's grand ballroom sparkles like a jewelry box, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow prisms across 200 guests in evening wear. I adjust my silver braided crown and survey the room with new eyes, cataloging the mix of genuine wedding guests and Detective Chen's undercover investigators. The tall man by the champagne fountain adjusting his tie clip, Agent Rodriguez with a hidden camera. The elegant woman photographing centerpieces, Agent Walsh, documenting everything. Even the sommelier has the alert posture of law enforcement. Marcus moves through the crowd in his black tuxedo, David's cufflinks catching the light as he shakes hands with Isabelle's music industry contacts. My son has no idea half these buyers are federal agents, or that his wedding reception is about to become the stage for his wife's downfall. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus's voice carries across the ballroom as he taps his champagne flute. Thank you for celebrating with us tonight, but before dinner, I have a special surprise. He gestures toward the grand piano positioned at the center of the room, where Isabelle sits in her reception gown, a flowing cream silk that makes her look like an angel. The irony burns. My beautiful wife has agreed to debut her original compositions tonight, sharing the music that's been hidden in her heart until now. Marcus's voice swells with pride and love. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to witness something truly special, my wife's debut performance of the songs that brought us together. The crowd applauds as Isabelle settles at the piano bench, her fingers poised above the keys like a predator ready to strike. Industry contacts lean forward with interest. Phones appear, ready to record. The stage is set for her greatest theft yet. And Detective Chen's team is recording every moment. Isabelle's fingers begin the opening notes of David's love song, the same melody that accompanied her walk down the aisle just hours ago. But now she's claiming it as her own creation, her voice carrying across the hushed ballroom as she begins to speak. This first piece came to me in dreams, she says, her voice soft and reverent as her hands move across the keys. Dreams about the kind of love that transcends time, that survives even death itself. The melody swells, David's crescendo, the one he'd practiced a dozen times until it perfectly captured the moment he first saw me across that poetry reading in little 5 points. She plays it flawlessly, but she's never lived it. I call it eternal promise, she continues, the music building toward the bridge David had struggled with for weeks. It came from my heart, inspired by the deep love I feel for Marcus and the wisdom that comes from experiencing profound loss. Several guests wipe away tears. A music executive makes notes on his phone. The cameras keep rolling as Isabelle weaves her web of lies around David's most intimate creation. She transitions into the second piece, a gentle waltz David had composed for our 10th anniversary. I watch her claim that too, describing how the rhythm came to me while walking in the garden, thinking about how love grows stronger with time. The garden where David and I had danced to this very song on summer evenings, where he'd hummed the melody while tending his roses. And this final piece, she says, beginning the fragment of David's unfinished lullaby, is for the future, for the family Marcus and I are building together. The lullaby David had been composing for grandchildren he'd never meet. She's even stolen his dreams. The applause is thunderous. Industry contacts approach with business cards. Marcus beams with pride as his wife takes her bows, accepting congratulations for music she murdered to obtain. But I'm already rising from my seat, my hands steady as I prepare to reclaim my husband's legacy. Excuse me, I say, my voice carrying across the ballroom with the authority of 3 generations of Georgian women. Before we continue the celebration, I'd like to share the true story behind this beautiful music. The room falls silent. Marcus turns from the piano, his face already flushing with embarrassment and anger. Isabelle's fingers freeze above the keys, her perfect composure cracking just slightly. Mom, don't, Marcus starts, but I'm already moving toward the piano, the crowd parting before me like water. That first piece, Eternal Promise, as Isabelle calls it, was actually composed by my late husband David for our 25th wedding anniversary. My voice remains calm, conversational, but it reaches every corner of the room. I know this because I watched him write every note. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Industry contacts exchange glances. Phones turn toward me, recording my every word. In fact, I can prove it, I continue, reaching the piano where Isabelle sits frozen. The bridge section, the part that builds toward the crescendo, David struggled with that for weeks. He kept saying the transition felt forced, until one evening when he threw his pencil across the room and said, "Love shouldn't be this complicated, Nino." The specific detail, one only the true composer's wife would know, hits the room like a physical force. Several guests lean forward, suddenly interested in this unexpected drama. He finally solved it by thinking about our first fight as newlyweds, how we'd learn to find harmony even in discord. I place my hand on the piano, feeling David's presence in the smooth wood. The melody that follows represents forgiveness, the way love grows stronger after surviving conflict. Isabelle finally finds her voice. That's a beautiful interpretation of my work, but... Your work, I turn to face her fully, and she shrinks back from whatever she sees in my eyes. Tell me, Isabelle, what inspired the key change in measure 47? What were you thinking when you wrote the coda? Silence. She has no answer because she never wrote those measures, never agonized over the harmonies, never lived the love story they represent. The crowd watches our confrontation with growing fascination, sensing they're witnessing something far more dramatic than a simple wedding reception. I pull out my phone with steady hands, my voice carrying clearly across the hushed ballroom. Since Isabelle seems to have forgotten the creative process behind her compositions, perhaps this recording will refresh her memory. Mom, what are you doing? Marcus moves toward me, but Detective Chen's agents subtly block his path, their positions suddenly making sense to anyone paying attention. I press play, and Isabelle's voice fills the ballroom through the sound system, clear and unmistakable. Did you know that certain heart medications become lethal when combined with common blood thinners? I didn't, until I researched it. The room goes dead silent, every conversation stops, every glass freezes halfway to lips. Your precious David was so trusting. He actually thanked me for bringing his heart medication. Can you imagine? He thanked me for the pills that killed him. Gasps echo across the ballroom. Several guests step away from Isabelle instinctively. Marcus goes white as paper, staring at his wife like he's never seen her before. I'm a businesswoman. Your husband had something I needed, and he was too weak to use it properly. I simply redistributed the assets. The recording continues, capturing every cold, calculated word of Isabelle's confession. Her laughter about David's gratitude. Her casual discussion of research into lethal drug combinations. Her complete lack of remorse for murdering a gentle man who trusted her. That's not. Isabelle stammers, but her voice is drowned out by the growing murmur of horror from the crowd. Marcus stares at her, his face cycling through disbelief, recognition, and dawning horror. Isabelle, tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't. But she can't. The recording is too clear, too detailed, too obviously genuine. Her own words have condemned her in front of 200 witnesses and a dozen cameras. Industry contacts back away, suddenly wanting nothing to do with music obtained through murder. Wedding guests pull out phones, some calling 911, others already posting to social media. The perfect wedding reception has become a public execution. Did you really think I'd let my husband's murderer profit from his death? I ask, my voice carrying clearly across the stunned ballroom. Did you think a mother would let her son's killer raise his child? Isabelle's perfect composure finally shatters completely. You can't prove anything. That recording is fake, manufactured. Actually, we can prove quite a lot. Detective Chen steps forward, her badge gleaming as she identifies herself to the crowd. Mrs. Dubois, you're under arrest for the murder of David Surguladze and conspiracy to commit fraud. The ballroom erupts in chaos as more agents reveal themselves. The sommelier produces handcuffs. The photographer turns out to be a federal investigator. Even some of the industry contacts show their law enforcement credentials. This entire reception was a sting operation, Chen announces to the stunned crowd. We've documented multiple instances of fraud, forgery, and theft of intellectual property, all captured on camera with full audio. Marcus stares around the room in shock, finally understanding the scope of what's been happening. How long have you known? Your mother contacted us last night, Chen explains gently. But we've been building a case against your wife for months. She's wanted in connection with 3 other suspicious deaths, all involving wealthy men with valuable assets. Isabelle makes a desperate attempt to flee, but agents block every exit. Her cream silk gown tangles around her legs as she stumbles, the angel facade finally stripped away to reveal the predator underneath. Marcus, you have to believe me, she calls out as handcuffs click around her wrists. I love you, I'm carrying your baby. But Marcus is staring at me with new understanding, pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. The way Isabelle had isolated him from me, her constant suggestions about my mental state, her convenient presence during David's final weeks. Mom, he whispers, his voice breaking, what have I done? As Isabelle is led away in handcuffs, I produce the evidence I've been saving for this moment. David's original manuscript, the pages she thought she'd burned completely. She missed this, I tell Marcus, holding out the handwritten sheets. Your father's original composition in his own handwriting, the real eternal promise, written for our love story, not hers. Marcus takes the pages with trembling hands, his eyes filling with tears as he recognizes David's distinctive script. The way he formed his treble clefs like tiny birds, the margin notes in his careful penmanship. The coffee stain from the morning he'd been so excited about the bridge section that he'd knocked over his mug. I remember this, Marcus whispers, tracing his father's handwriting with one finger. Dad let me turn the pages while he worked on it. I was home from college, and he said he wanted me to see how real music was made. He was so proud of that piece, I tell him softly. He said it captured everything he'd learned about love in 25 years of marriage. Around us, the ballroom slowly empties as guests file out, many still recording on their phones, sharing the dramatic footage that will make this the most talked-about wedding reception in social media history. But I only have eyes for my son, watching him reconnect with his father's memory through the music Isabelle tried to steal. The lullaby fragment too, I add, showing him the unfinished piece. He was composing it for future grandchildren, for your babies. Marcus's face crumples as the full weight of what he's lost, and what I've saved, hits him. His father's legacy, his family's artistic heritage, the musical gifts meant for children not yet born. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispers. I should have trusted you. I should have known you'd never lie about something like this. You loved her, I say simply. Love makes us vulnerable to beautiful lies. But as I hold my son while he cries for his father and his shattered marriage, I know David's music will survive. It will be played for his grandchildren, carrying our love story forward into the next generation. Where it belongs. 6 months later, I sit in the front row of a different kind of ceremony, Isabelle's sentencing hearing. She's been convicted on multiple counts of murder, fraud, and theft, with evidence linking her to 4 deaths across 5 years. The music industry contacts who attended our reception testified about her attempted fraud, their recordings providing crucial evidence. Marcus sits beside me, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. The divorce was finalized last month, and DNA tests revealed the pregnancy was fabricated, another lie in Isabelle's web of deception. 25 years to life, the judge announces, and I feel David's presence like a warm hand on my back. As we leave the courthouse, Marcus stops on the steps. Mom, I need to ask you something. Anything. The lullaby Dad was writing, would you help me finish it? His voice is tentative, hopeful. For his grandchildren, when they come someday, I want them to know their grandfather through his music. I adjust my silver-braided crown, feeling my grandmother's strength flowing through the ancient style, and smile at my son. I think he'd like that very much. That evening, we sit together at David's piano, Marcus's hands finding the melody while I provide the words. A collaboration between father and son, mediated by a mother's love. The music fills our home again, no longer stolen or silenced, but alive and growing. As we work, I think about Isabelle in her prison cell, finally facing the consequences of her choices. About justice served and family restored. About the power of truth to survive even the most beautiful lies. But mostly, I think about David's hands moving across these same keys, creating beauty from nothing, building a legacy of love that no thief could ever truly steal. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, Mom, Marcus says quietly as we reach the bridge section his father never finished. Dad would be proud of how you fought for him and for the truth. I place my hand over his on the keys, feeling 3 generations of music flow between us. He would be proud of both of us, my darling boy. We brought his music home. Outside, evening settles over the garden where David and I once danced to his compositions under summer stars. The roses are blooming again, and somewhere in the melody we're creating, I hear his voice humming along, proud, grateful, and finally at peace. The truth has set us all free.
Nino, your courage in exposing the truth is inspiring. It shows how a mother's love can dismantle deception and safeguard a family's legacy, even at great personal cost. Was risking everything to reveal Isabelle's crimes justified? Share your thoughts below, and if tales of real justice move you, like and subscribe. I'm Eliza Quinn, and remember, here on Wedding Day Justice, veils off, justice on.